Hey, good morning, everybody. It's Hammer. Today is Monday, July 28th, 2025. Welcome back to work. It's going to be a busy week this week. I am here with the Daily Mortgage Market Update with your Rate Sensei show. Maybe I should call it a podcast. It's not like podcasts or podcasts anymore. They're all anything. So today we're going to be talking about the Treasury borrowing strategy that is helping rates. Just a little thing. And then we're going to talk about why this is such a big week for rates, or is it? So, on paper, this is a legendary week with all of the things going on this week, and yet maybe not as big of a deal as you'd think. So we're going to dig into that. I'll tell you all about it. Remember, you can join me live each and every weekday morning, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time on Facebook and on YouTube. If you're here live, say good morning. If you're watching on the replay, don't forget, give me a hashtag replay in the comments. Don't forget to smash that like button, tag an hello friend, share this post in a group. I am assuming that with 16 of you on that y'all are commenting. However, I don't see any of the comments. They are not showing up today on the chat. So that's disconcerting because I can't see what y'all are saying or why. I'm almost wondering if I should refresh this thing. Nah. All right. Well, hold on a minute. I'm going to pull up the Facebook group and the YouTube and take a look at it live. So bear with me a minute. I know it's a little disconcerting, but I can't see your comments on the chat, and I would assume that y'all are chatting. Yeah, see, there you are. I see you. What live? Good morning, Jerry Vila, Bobby J. Jones, Megan Bissell. Good morning, y'all. I see on my personal feed. I don't have the. Hold on, give me a minute. I'm going to bring up the. It looks like Restream is glitching. Let me bring up the Originator Success Facebook page, and I'll take a look at comments there. And let me see about. Let me see on the Originator Success YouTube channel. It shows we are live here. So, yeah, close. Okay. Good morning, Mark Clark, Randy Teakle, Angela Walters, Amy Blauser, Vic Masweeney, Mike Brown. Great to have all of you here. And looking at the Originator Success page, Ron Siegel. Now you can say anything you want. Hammer won't know what you're saying. Yeah, but I have ways. National Chocolate Milk Day. There's something to celebrate. Tim Pila Dickinson. Good morning, one and all. Well, since the comments are playing and I can't see your chat, I'm going to go ahead and turn that off anyway. And let's go ahead and get to the good stuff. Let's dive in. I've done enough tracking, and I'll keep an eye on the comments. So here you go. So much to go on this week. Let me go ahead and clean up my captions here. All right. So first things first, taking a look this morning, mortgage bonds currently down 9 basis points on the day. Not really a huge deal. Not anything to get too worried about. In fact, it really puts us right about here. This is when pricing came out on Friday. Puts us right there, right around the same level. You can see here that things improved a little bit on the day on Friday. Not enough for any replaces better, but we did improve a little bit. And although we're down a little bit this morning, it basically puts us flat. You can see here, it's really been flat. And not only do we see that in mortgage-backed securities, you can really see that as well when we look at rate sheets. 6.81, a number we've just grown so used to seeing here, 6.81, 6.81, 6.81. It was a hair better than that for a couple of days, a hair worse than that a couple of days before that. But I mean, realistically, look at how stable rates have been over the last month. You're talking within an eighth of a point. We have not really seen rates move. They move a little bit from day to day, right? A little bit up and, kind of keep moving higher, keep moving higher. Rates moved higher here. Then they start to come and here, let me change the colors actually. These are right. So this is where now they start to come back down, and that's a smiley face. We love it when rates come down, right? And if we change this to red, we circle all these. These were in red where rates went up a little bit. And then right here, they kind of start to creep higher a little bit, and then we're back to yellow. It's basically flat. And this morning, it's going to be flat. It's going to be about the same. Again, down about 9 basis points, which sounds really bad. But when you look at when pricing came out, it's basically right about the same level. So that's what we got going on there. However, The real thing is everything we've got going on this week. So let's take a minute and kind of go over all of this different stuff that we've got going on this week. This is one of the most full, complete economic calendars that I can remember seeing forever. So the week actually ratchets up as we go. So today we have a couple of bond auctions. Not going to be a big deal. You'll see very little movement today over that. Tomorrow we're going to get a little bit more, right? We've got some home data. That's not really a market mover. FHFA home pricing, Case-Shiller home pricing, that's not really a market mover. What is going to be more of a market mover is we've got JOLTS. So JOLTS tomorrow, the first thing that's a big deal. And everything you'll notice, all of this data, it's after we talk tomorrow. So it's at 10 a.m., right? So it's after we talk tomorrow, but tomorrow we got JOLTS, we got consumer confidence. That's also going to play a bit of a role. And then in the afternoon, we've got the 2 and 7 year auctions. So actually shows the 2 year at 11:30 and the 7 year at 1 o'clock. So we've got a little movement there. Now, as we get to the week, though, Wednesday, of course, Wednesday is a big day because we have the Fed meeting. The Fed interest rate decision, which we know, according to almost everybody, expectations are. Let me go ahead and July. Expectations are that rates will remain unchanged at this next meeting. Nobody is expecting the Fed to cut rates at the July meeting, so there's really not anything to worry about there. But also on Wednesday, we get the second quarter preliminary GDP numbers. Remember, we get the initial, we get the revised, we get the final. So over the next 3 months, we're going to get this month, we get the initial, next month, we get the revised, and then in September, we'll get the final. We're going to get Q2 GDP. This is going to start to reflect some of the argument about tariffs. We'll see more of an argument that they hit in the third quarter, but you're going to see some of that play a role in here. So we're going to see that on Wednesday as well. We've got the PCE that goes along with the GDP. That's not your monthly PCE. That's your quarterly PCE. Kind of a preview though of what's going to happen the next day on Thursday when we have the actual PCE. Now, this one not going to be too much of a mover, and let me explain to you why. So, what I had put on here is I said this is a really big week, or is it? The reason I say or is it, you got to take a look here at the dates for the September Fed meeting. So, the September Fed meeting. Let me bounce this all so we can see all this next to each other, and then I'll go over to your comments on the different screens and see if they're showing up. See if anything comes up on the chat on here. Nope, still not getting the chat. Um, Looking at your comments here. Good morning, Jessica Wells, Ken Seaver, Tom Deadmore, Chris Dickerson. Don't talk bad about him. He's looking. See, exactly. I got you, Chris. Um, let's see. I don't see any fresh comments on that screen. Nothing new on this one. Kathy Jetson, good morning. So, anyway, coming back to this, let me go back on here. So, looking at the September meeting, this is the meeting is the 16th, and the Fed announcement, the policy statement, all that stuff on the 17th, right? Expectations right now, 60% that we'll see a rate cut, about a 35% idea that we won't see a rate cut in the September meeting. The reason that although we have so much economic data going on this week, you can see it all here. I mean, there's so much economic data at play here. However, we're going to see another one of almost everything here before the next Fed meeting. So all of this data that's coming immediately after, I mean, arguably the only jobs data that we have coming before the Fed meeting is going to be the JOLTS data. So the Fed will have the JOLTS data because their meeting is happening on Tuesday with a final, with all the data. So it's happening Tuesday and Wednesday. So the JOLTS data, the consumer confidence, that'll happen the first day of the meeting, they'll get that data. But all this other stuff, they're going to get the GDP data the morning of, but they'll have already made their decision and everything and all that stuff, right? So, and then everything that happens after this jobs data, yes, it's a big deal, but is it a bigger deal than what we get on September 5th? That's the question, right? Because if this Fed meeting is September 16th and 17th. You see the date right here. September 5th, we're going to get another jobs data. So this non-farm payroll jobs data, yes, it's going to have an effect on the market. But what'll happen is, depending on how it comes out, you're going to hear a lot of, but the Fed's going to have one more of this report before the next Fed meeting, before it has to make a decision, before whatever. Now, it's very likely that the Fed at this meeting will kind of kick the can down the road, talk about how everything will be data dependent, how they're not ready to make any moves yet. They're waiting to see there's the beginning signs of tariffs hitting markets, et cetera, et cetera. And they're going to kick the can down the road. And depending on how this data comes out, the reaction to it could be more muted because we're not going to see a reaction. But remember something. I've been stressing that the Fed does not control mortgage rates. Influence. If we see this data come in weak, it's gonna be good for bonds, even without the idea that the Fed is going to need to make a decision. Mortgage rates, mortgage-backed securities, they're not strictly based on what the Fed does. So, if this data comes in weaker, that's gonna that's gonna be good for mortgage rates and pricing. It always is. If it comes in poorly, before we used to spend every day talking about the Fed, years ago, we didn't talk about Fed meetings like we do now. We would talk about them a few days before they happened. It wasn't ever revolving around the Fed, but yet these reports were still critical reports. So all of this data, it's kind of arguable. It's not going to have. It's easy to dismiss that it will have less of an effect on the Fed decision making because we're going to get all another one of these reports between now and then. However, on the actual overall economy, this data, the actual core PCE data, jobless claims has been having, it's a small effect every week, but it is cumulative. We're looking at the continued claims number here. The initial claims have come in lower than expected for a few weeks in a row now. But the continued claims are what we're definitely going to be continue to look at here. We've got the consumer sentiment data on Friday. It's going to take, kind of sit in the back of the bus. It's much, much more of a backseat compared to this jobs data. We've got all of this data, all these reports coming in this week, all these different things going on. It's going to be a very full week. Now, here's how I would approach this if it were me. If I've got, and I'm going to put this on the comments here. So, and let me know what you guys think. Again, I'm reading the comments on the other page, so it'll take me a minute, but I will get there. So, if it were me, my luck, right? Less 15, less than 15 days, float into. Hold on, I'm putting this all on. If it's less than 15 days, I would float into Wednesday. I don't think we could creep worse between now and then, right? We could definitely creep worse. But when we take a look here, I mean, today, and I'm going to come back to talking about why the Treasury auctions in a minute. We've got the auctions. Tomorrow, we're going to have that JOLTS data, but it's Wednesday's Fed meeting. I like to float into the Fed meetings. And most importantly, it's the press conference, right? We know that the Fed is not going to. I hate that it just that is so annoying. It just moved, hold on a minute. It oh, no, it just disappeared altogether. Where'd you go? Where'd you Ay vey. Hold on a minute. Moved itself over to this screen. There we There it is. Alright, so let me make this smaller and move it over. Okay. This is so distracting. Sorry, y'all. Here you go. Okay, so taking a look here, picking back up, I would float into this Fed meeting. I wanna see which direction markets are heading, right? By the way, on top of that, the other stuff I didn't even talk about we got going on this week, we've also got, you've got, uh, whatchamacallit, earnings coming out. There's a string of earnings, all the tech companies, right? The big 7, Amazon, Apple, Meta, Microsoft. So we've got a lot of earnings. That's not gonna have much of an effect on bonds, but it is play in the markets, especially on stocks, right? So, of course, you got Wednesday, you got the Fed meeting, FOMC meeting, got all this other data going on there. There's a lot going on, and then we've got Trump's deadline, self-imposed imposed tariff deadline on August 1st. Now, If there's one thing we know about Trump, we don't know anything about Trump says he's not going to extend this deadline. It's on Friday. So will this trade drama have an effect into the week? Probably. But also remember something. They talked about the whole taco thing. Trump, I don't know, it's Trump backing down. I think sit for, but if Trump sees it's advantageous to him, he'll say, "We're not moving that date. We're not moving that date." Oh, I decided to go ahead and move that date. He's got no problem doing that. So I think he'll move the date for anything that's not being done and all that stuff. I think the trade stuff will take much more of a backseat this week. But man, there is so much going on. I think the first focus has to be the Fed meeting on Wednesday. That's why I'd be floating anything into Wednesday. Um, then consider floating, or then consider locking everything else. I would be floating everything else. Anything that's got 30 days. There's so much that's gonna change over the next 30 days, as it comes to this stuff. Because again, all of these reports, we're gonna get them all again and 30 days from now. So when it comes to rates and pricing, I'm not really that concerned that things are gonna move up too high. If we do see things jump up this week, I think that they will fall back down over the next couple of weeks. Um, but there is a potential to see rates improve over the next, this week over this course of all this data. So I would be leaning into floating, even though there's so much risk. Again, it's not for the faint of heart. Loans closing near term, they're the ones that most have to consider locking because they don't have time to recover if we do see a strong knee jerk reaction. And remember, we're going to see things that are going to hit on Wednesday. We've got the actual Fed meeting and press conference. That's when we really have to decide. I don't think Jolts is definitely going to move things. Listen, if you don't want rates to move at all and you're totally paranoid, then you should be locking today. That's just the bottom line. But if Jolts coming in, that could help out a little bit, even if it hurts us, not a huge thing. We're going to get into that Fed meeting. Then we've got the actual PCE data for inflation, but most importantly is Friday's non-farm payroll. After the Fed meeting, these are your two big events. After your Fed meeting, we've got the non-farm payroll data. We got to take those into effect. So, all right, I'm going to go to your comments on the other stuff since I can't see it on here. Yeah, Greg, I know what taco was. I just don't know what it stood for. Babani wants to know audio is in and out. Is it only me? I think it's only you. Rob Stewart, late but live. Good morning, sir. Great to see you. Let's see. Anyone else? Good morning, Rock. Great to see you, man. Any thoughts from Nikki T over the weekend? I didn't see anything from Nikki T yet. I think it's too early. I think we'll see that tomorrow. I did not see anything on the Wall Street Journal on the front page from Nikki T that I noticed. Nothing. It said Fed. That was on here. So, but let's talk about another Wall Street Journal article. Hold on, let me make sure that you guys are seeing the screen. You are okay. Let's talk about another Wall Street Journal article. Trump and percent bring new style to managing America's debt. So we've talked about this one before, and here's the key: the 10-year Treasury yield is a long-term bond, right? If the Fed were, I mean, Fed, if the Treasury were to issue more of the 10-year Treasury bonds, what would happen is that would, let me refresh this so that I can scroll, that would drive yields up. If you have an increase in supply and a reduction in demand, it drives the prices down. If the prices go down, the yield goes up. This would be bad for mortgage rates, bad for treasury rates, etc. Now, what's happening though is Trump and Bissett bring new style to managing American debt. Leaders have said they would wait for rates to fall before issuing long-term bonds. One of the ways that Scott Bessent wants to try to manipulate markets as well as save America money is by not issuing long-standing debt because the rates are not favorable to the United States now. It's one of the reasons why Trump is so adamant that he wants the Fed to cut rates because he feels that it will put us into a position where we would have better borrowing stance and rates would come down for borrowing. So, Trump administration sending a different message than usual. The usual message being of like, hey, it's boring by design. They issue bonds in a level that everybody knows. They actually put out their issuance ahead of time. So, Treasury, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has talked openly about waiting for interest rates to come down before considering increases in longer-term debt issuance he hinted would be necessary before joining the government. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go very short term, he said in June. Wait until this guy gets out, get the rates way down, and then go long. So, and this, by the way, this is where he talks about, he suggested the Treasury should only should debt that matures in about 6 to 9 months until Fed Reserve Chair Jerome Powell is replaced next year. So this is advantageous to mortgage bonds because it helps keep the yield for 10-year treasuries lower. Lower the yield, the better that we are. Remember, this is the opposite of mortgage bonds. When this goes down, it makes us smile. We want this to go down. When mortgage bonds, we want these to go up, and that's what makes us smile on mortgage bonds. So that's kind of what we got going on there. So anyway, it is going to be a busy week for now. I would be floating everything. I would definitely be looking at loans closing near term, deciding if you're going to float into Wednesday. I would float into Wednesday because we don't know how that press conference is going to go. The press conference is going to move rates a lot more than the actual Fed policy statement. So I would wait and see that. But I'm going to go and look over at your comments again. I can't see them here on the computer, but let me see. Ron Siegel said a 1% drop in rates equals 300 billion savings to the federal government on national debt interest, and that's a significant amount of money. Uh, Mike Tebow said In-Out burgers are great, audio not so good. Mike said audio is in and out. I wonder. Let me see something real quick. I wonder if their whole thing is just wiggy today. It's on the right microphone, yeah. So, well, anyway, sorry that today's wasn't the best show. Mm, with the technology, but we'll see if tomorrow will be better. I'll restart everything and we'll start over. So, all right, everybody, I'll see you tomorrow. Hope you all have a fantastic day. Again, it's going to be a fun week. You're going to want to tune in each day this week. I'll see y'all later. Have a great one.